You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome into a Friday night Fantasy Football Huddle. It's time for Bet Set Snap here, going into Week 6. I'm Derek, joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, man. It's Friday night. Navigating a lot of injuries, right? There's a lot of players out this week. And just kind of working on bench depth and navigating the waiver wire here a little bit. But, that's part of it. So we're going to see what we can do and turn some of those opportunities into advantages for us here and see about making some cash this weekend.
I like it. In fact, full transparency for the folks out there listening and watching. You and I are set to, take we're squaring off here in the home league. And right now you've got a 43 point lead on me, heading into the weekend. So, yeah, that's true.
It's nothing in this league, man. It's just an average defensive performance, right?
Right. And that's the thing I always love when I'm talking to folks that play fantasy and that kind of stuff, but they haven't never played in a league, like ours where there's points. Quite frankly, I'm still wanting to get to a point where if we can figure out a way to get like points for dudes drinking Gatorade on the sideline, like they get that, and then they get extra points if it's the red Gatorade or the orange Gatorade or whatever, right? Like that would be that would take it to another level. So, Kevin and I are projected, and that was the thing I was looking at it today. You and I are projected to be right around each other. Both of our squads projected to do right around about 430 points. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup going in here. And it'll ultimately kind of depend on who, which guys put up some stud performances. And hopefully nobody has any duds in the roster. Although my track record on picking wide receivers, I don't put it by me to have messed that up again.
It's all part of it. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a good week, right? I mean, right. Evenly matched teams, each got a couple guys on bye week, each got a couple injuries, right, that we're dealing with. So, we're going to see how it shakes out, but it should be a fun one. It should be nice and back and forth, right? Little fun to rib each other on Sunday.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll be talking all about it on Tuesday as well, too, when we go back live. So, the interesting thing is I had to do it. I had to put Desmond Ridder into the starting lineup there. And I don't feel good about it.
Desmond Ridder has not lost a home game.
That's why I had to do it.
Since high school.
Right.
That's high school. He did not lose a home game at Cincinnati. He has not lost a home game as a starter in the NFL, and Atlanta's at home. So, I mean, and the performance he put up last week, you got to wonder, are they trying to change the tides at least a little bit, right? So that way you don't need 300 yards necessarily out of Desmond Ridder. If you can live with, 235 and a touchdown when you're spot starting him, right? Like you can live with that, especially in a super flex league. So he doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. He just can't be, Jamarcus Russell and just do absolutely nothing.
Right. He can't have Mac Jones performances.
Right.
So absolutely. So that'll be a good one. Desmond Ridder went off for 70 points on my bench last week. So as we talk about the crazy scoring, that's what that came to be there. So guys, if you have some questions, comments, go ahead and throw those in the chat here. We'll hit those up. We're of course going to go through the entire slate of games here for week 6, calling our shots as far as how we're thinking the spreads are going to play out in this thing, how the totals are going to play out in this thing, and as far as some player props that we're looking at here as well. So, all righty, we do have some questions coming in. Let's hit these up, and then we'll get into our first matchup here. Terrence, start Higgins over Amari Cooper. I think you almost got to.
Yes. Now, Higgins is a game-time decision, but the 90-minute warning, we should get both those announcements. We should get both those announcements early, right? So, double checking.
Doesn't Cincy have the later game?
And that might be where our hiccup is here. Matchup.
Oh no, they've got the 11.
They got the 11.
Yeah, they've got the early game. So
they got the 11. Same thing with Cleveland, right? So, yes, if T. Higgins is a go, you just have to, right? Like you just can't trust PJ Walker against the San Francisco 49ers and have Amari Cooper be relevant. And he might outscore Higgins, Terrence. Like he might do that, but the upside and the talent is with Higgins, and the matchup speaks to Higgins as well. So all things point there if he's a go. But you should check in 89 minutes prior to kickoff after they designate. And if Higgins is out, it makes your decision really easy.
Right. And that's the other thing too is and I've got some nuggets in of insight I'm hoping into that San Francisco Cleveland game that there's
The
other
weather's supposed to be crappy and
there's other matchups you need to be targeting over that one there. So Higgins, start Ferguson or Logan Thomas. I'm on the Logan Thomas side.
I'm on the Logan Thomas side by a hair. I think he has a slightly better upside, but at the same time, I am a sucker for having guys in prime time. Like I just, when in doubt, if I feel like they're even, and I do feel like these guys are pretty evenly, ranked and statted out for this week. I would probably lean Ferguson because I like to have something to root for on Monday night.
Fair enough. And you're right. These guys, as far as, consensus rankings go, all of that, they're back to back, right? It's 10 and 11. So it's a coin flip basically to it. And I like your thought about, the primetime game. Guys get up to play in those. It gives you something to watch and look forward to on Monday night. I'm going to go with the Logan Thomas one, though, because the matchup is better. The Chargers, 13th most points allowed to opposing tight ends. They're the 4th most points allowed as an opposing defense. So, yeah, they give up plenty of points there, just typically not at the tight end position, whereas the Falcons, they give up the 5th most points to opposing tight ends and 29th most points overall. So where a lot of the points that they give up on the defensive side of the ball for fantasy tend to go and bounce in the way of the opposing tight end. So that's a big reason I'm leaning that way. Pick one and one wide receiver in a flex. Garrett Wilson, Flowers, Lockett, Mixon, Palmer. Thanks, fellas. Palmer out. I'm probably going to look at Lockett and Mixon as the flex is how I'm going to roll that one, I think.
I'm going to go Garrett Wilson. Zach Wilson's been just serviceable enough. Yes, the Broncos are not great, but Patrick Surtain is really good and helped limit to Garrett Wilson last Sunday. He's not going to have the same tight coverage here going up against Philly. Their back end has been much more forgiving. We saw Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua get theirs. Now, Zach Wilson is not Matthew Stafford, so I'm not claiming that, but I do think Wilson can get open for, 70 and a touchdown. I think is where he could end up at. Lockett's prop right now is at 51.5. And Cincinnati's defense is a little bit better than people, kind of think of them as. So I expect this game to be pretty tightly contested back and forth as far as Seattle and Cincinnati. So maybe Wilson and maybe I'm going Wilson and Lockett.
Okay. I mean, I could certainly see that one there as well.
I don't hate the Mixon side. It's definitely between those three, right? So if you don't like, I guess one of my answers, then pivot over. But I like Wilson and Lockett, but Mixon's a pretty close number 3.
Yeah, I mean they've all got kind of neutral to plus matchups as far as that leans. So there's not really a glaring like, oh my gosh, don't go with that guy type of thing between Wilson, Lockett, and Mixon there. I think Mixon probably gives you the best floor out of any of these guys. I could be talked into going Wilson over Lockett there, but so Gorilla Kid, it kind of depends on what you need. If you need a ceiling play and you need you're projected to lose, you're projected to be behind on that one. I would go with the ceiling play and go with Lockett and Garrett Wilson. They're going to give you the best. They're going to give you the highest ceiling, I think, on this one. Mixon gives you a safe floor. Is kind of how I'm looking at that one, and that's kind of where I like looking at those things. Is actually probably Garrett Wilson is your ceiling play. Lockett is kind of your floor play for the wide receivers there. So I kind of gave you two floors. Kevin kind of gave you a little bit of ceiling upshot there. Is Tank Dell worth a hold or nah? Girl, it really depends on what you got and what else is out there on the that you can acquire for it. Is Tank Dell a better option than DJ Chark? Sure, I'd rather take my shot with that. Is he a better shot than Tyler Boyd? I would still hold on to Tank Dell, right? Like it really depends on who else is out there. Is it, are we holding him over the likes of Jacoby Myers? Well, then, no, it's not worth that one. So it really depends more so on what you got and what you can pick up over anything else. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think I'd agree. I think it depends on what else you're looking at. So, Tank Dell is probably at this point in the season. I think Tank Dell is a guy that you might keep over Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Reed from the Packers, Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like those are the types of guys I'm keeping Tank Dell over. Like, yeah, I think Tank Dell, honestly, I think he's kind of that Quentin Johnston role. Like everyone wants to love Quentin Johnston. We have yet to see him do anything. Like I am not starting. I was telling Derek pre-show, I'm not starting that guy until I see him do anything. Like, because last 2 weeks ago, 3 targets, 1 catch. Like there was absolutely nothing on his stat line that screamed, go ahead and start this guy.
Right. Agreed. Alrighty. Any other thoughts here? Any other news notes you want to talk about before we start getting into matchups?
Let's see. Deshaun Watson out. Miles Sanders out.
Tank Dell still in the concussion protocol.
Roshan Johnson out. It is Deonta Foreman, right?
Yep.
If you are dying at running back help, you need to go look at your waiver wire right this second. I'll give you permission to turn away. But go look at your waiver wire right this second and see if you can get Deonta Foreman. And not that I expect him to go gangbusters against Minnesota. It's more their back end that's had the issue than the front seven, with the exception of the DeAndre Swift game. But it is guaranteed points because he is going to see all because Herbert's on IR, Roshan Johnson's out, and Travis Homer is inactive also. He was declared out. So they're down 3 of their top 4 backs. So Deonta Foreman as a sneaky little flex play this week if you're hurting at running back.
I think here's a call your shot type of thing, but I think I'm kind of looking for him to get about 60 yards on the ground, potentially fall in the end zone. Like I think he can get you. The end zone's kind of a hero call there, but the 60 yards, I feel pretty confident on saying that, and he'll probably catch a couple of passes, get another 10 yards that way. So I think this is one of those that he could potentially get you right around 8 to 10 points. And for a waiver wire pickup, if you're desperate at running back, 8 to 10 points in a half point or full point PPRs is worth flex consideration there for sure. So, alrighty. Any other news notes? Any other thoughts?
No, I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, I would agree. All righty, let's go ahead and get into the match. Oh, yeah.
Laporta, game time decision, trending towards playing.
Right.
St. Brown, full practice is in. Mike Evans, full practice is in. I think that's it.
All right. And I'm sure we'll have a few more that we think of as we're going through the matchups there as well. So, and if we think of those and go through those, we'll make sure to bring those up as well. All righty. Tony Pollard was another one that was questionable all week. He is full practice expected to play. All right. Let's go ahead and get into it we got one of those London games again. Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans traveling across the pond to square off in old London town. Baltimore favored by 4. Over under on this one is 41.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take Tennessee in this game. Baltimore's losses have been to subpar teams, right? It have been to teams who are not on their talent level. And Tennessee is another game. Like, they should not be able to keep up with Baltimore, but these are the games that Baltimore's allowed teams to hang around. So I'm going to say Tennessee covers the 4, field goal type game, but I'm going to take the under. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of points in this one. It would not surprise me if this game was 21-17, or that's the push, sorry, 21-18, something 20-17, something like that, where it's just under. But I do think Tennessee finds a way to cover this one.
Yeah, as much as I didn't want to go that route, I think you're right. The Baltimore offense just seemingly has some issues kind of finishing plays and getting into the end zone there. And so I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair, so I agree with you on the under. And when we've got low-scoring affairs, it's hard to put some separation sometimes between these guys. So I think that we're going to see Tennessee ultimately kind of sneak this thing in. That 21-18 call, I think, is pretty spot on there. So I think that's probably about where we're going to see is kind of that 39 total points here. As far as a prop goes, I really like Mark Andrews to go over 4.5 receptions.
No, fair enough. I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins over 59.5 receiving yards, coming off a 140-yard performance last week. Treylon Burks is out again, so this is really the passing attack that the Titans have. But it's nice to have a superstar like Nuke Hopkins that you can throw the ball to.
Absolutely.
I'm still baffled why he went to Tennessee.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
Neither here nor there.
Right. We're going to hit up this question here. So Gorilla Kid saying that QBs Herbert, running backs are Bijan, Mixon, Pacheco, Ford, Roshan, wide receivers Garrett Wilson, Christian Watson, Lockett, Puka Nacua, Dell, Tank Dell, Flowers, Deontay Johnson, lost Mike Williams, Travis Kelce. I guess you're posting the roster to go back to this one. Is Tank Dell worth a hold or not? With your roster, he's probably not going to see the field unless he has a late blow up on that one. Oh, do I need anything on this one?
I don't think you need anything.
No. I mean, unless
I think you're right,
like
and I'd keep him for bye weeks, right?
Right.
So Houston's bye week, I believe it's next week. I think Houston's at week 7 bye.
Mm-hmm.
So you get him through the bye week. You still never know what types of injuries may or may not come up, and he's going to be involved in Houston's offense, right? Like, you're not throwing away a guy who sees 2 targets every other or every third week, and you're just hoping for 2 points, right? Like, we've seen Tank Dell, he can get 6, 7, 8 targets in a game and really help this offense. They like the kid a lot. So I think he's worth the stash. Like, I will get lamb blasted for this, but I like him more than Christian Watson. Like, everybody loves Christian Watson. If you want to try and trade somebody, flip Christian Watson, see what else you can get. See if you can package him and Jerome Ford for a better running back if you want one. Like, and just see what it is. But I think someone might be willing to do that. The Josh Jacobs owner, right? Here's Jerome Ford and Christian Watson. I want Josh Jacobs. They're at least going to think about it. It's not a throwaway trade because people are in love with him.
Right. I would agree with that. Alrighty, let's go ahead and hit up the Washington Commanders and the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are favored to win this one by 2.5. The over-under 42.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking Atlanta at home. I see this by just barely covering. I see this as a field goal game. I think it's kind of back and forth, right? Like, the defenses aren't stellar, but they're just good enough. Atlanta wants to ground and pound. Washington's been starting slow and then chucking the ball around the yard to get back in games. So I do think there's some interesting dynamics in this one, but ultimately I think Atlanta does just enough to squeak out a 3-point win here. I'm going to take 42.5. I'm going to take the over. 23-20, right? Just barely. But I do think we get enough points here to just sneak over the 42.5.
Yeah, and these are kind of some interesting deals here when you look at these. I do think that the over gets hit on this thing. Both of these teams have shown that they can put up points in the 20s on this thing, and neither really has a defense that's going to stifle the other one to the point where we're going to see a low scoring affair. So I think that this is one that ultimately we see this thing play out probably about 24-21, and I think Atlanta is the 24 number there. So I think that they can cover the 3 points there. I think we do hit the over. As far as one of the props I really liked on this one was Bijan Robinson over 3.5 receptions.
I like that. His snap share is through the roof right now. So I like that. Looks like low-hanging fruit. I'm going to take Logan Thomas over 35.5 receiving yards, right? So this kind of plays into our question earlier. I do have Logan Thomas going over his yardage prop. Atlanta does give it up to the tight end. Sam Howell does look for Logan Thomas fairly regularly, and seemingly every time he does, it's good for 8 to 12 yards.
Absolutely. I really like that. I really like that call, right? Atlanta giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends there. And Sam Howell, Logan Thomas has been having a 20+% target share in a lot of games. So I love that call there. All right, let's hit this one up. Jelly of the month picked up Jeff Wilson as a stash and still out. Play 3 wide receiver and flex PPR, usually the flex wide receiver as well. JSN is the 5th wide receiver. Drop Wilson and grab Josh Downs for bench, or is Wilson more valuable with no Achane? Honestly, I'd probably, if you're looking to grab another wide receiver, I'd probably drop JSN.
Josh Downs is going to be relevant before JSN is. It's
Correct.
going to take an injury to DK or Tyler Lockett to make JSN relevant. Josh Downs is interesting. I got a couple ideas for what our waiver wire is going to look like on Tuesday, but I think there's a couple other wide receivers that could potentially be interesting. Rashee Rice is one of them. Mm-hmm. I think he continues to show well for Patrick Mahomes, especially in half-point PPR settings. Rashee Rice is there because his yards after the catch continue to climb throughout the season. So I like the idea of Wilson. Right. So if you want to pick up Downs, I agree with Derek. I would drop JSN and pick up Downs because I think he's going to be more relevant. But for now, yes, you want Wilson on your roster just in case, because if something happens to Raheem Mostert, then Jeff Wilson's the guy again. And if you can get a solo running back in that Miami offense, that could be a difference maker, even if it is only for 2 or 3 weeks.
Absolutely. I like it. All right, let's head into our next matchup here. We got the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Chicago Bears. Minnesota favored by 2.5. The over-under on this one's 43.5. Thoughts on this one?
I wanted to take Chicago, but then I remembered that the Bears are technically worse than the Broncos because the Broncos beat the Bears. So I am going to take Minnesota to cover here on the road. Shock everybody a little bit. I'm going to take the over. I think both pass defenses are not very good. They will give it up through the air here a little bit. So should have some points and at least be an entertaining game with 2 bad teams and kind of see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I ended up taking the Bears on this one because I think that they do find a way to kind of get things clicking. This is a deal where Chicago has seemingly kind of put it together here 2 games in a row, and I think we see this carry on over into a third. Justin Fields looking spectacular the last 2 games as well, even as a passer, not having to even rely necessarily on the legs to get it done for fantasy purposes. So I think that we see some of that continue here as well. The Vikings, one of the big questions is what does that offense look like? Sans Justin Jefferson on this one. Yeah, this is.
I think you're going to see a monster freaking week from TJ Hawkinson, and I think you're going to see Jefferson's targets get spread out between Cam Akers, Jordan Addison, and KJ Osborne.
Fair enough. But that being the case, I do think that we do see the Bears find a way to squeak inside that 2.5. I do think that the over gets hit. Not going to surprise me if we see this one end up, with a total closer to 60 than 40 when it's all said and done. Yeah, it would be. As far as a prop on this one that I really like is DJ Moore over 4.5 receptions.
I like that. I'm going to play right in with it. I think Justin Fields goes over 190.5 passing yards. I think that prop's a little low based off of how he's played, particularly in the first half against the Broncos and the Commanders.
I like it. All righty, let's head on over to our next matchup here. We got the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals favored by 2.5. The over-under on this one's 45. Thoughts on this one?
I like the Bengals at home. 3-point game. Would not surprise me to see Seattle, keep that a little bit closer, but I do think Cincinnati finds a way to squeak it out. I'm going to take the over. I think there's going to be just enough points. Both defenses are solid. I don't know that either one is great at this moment, but there's a lot of big names on both sides of the ball here. So I do think we find a way to see some points. And this one should be one of the more entertaining games, especially in the morning slate.
Yeah, I think this one will be a lot of fun to watch. I think both quarterbacks find a way to get this thing done. Like they're both passing props for quarterbacks looked to be hittable on that one and looked to be pretty decent. But I do think that Cincinnati does find a way to squeak this thing out. I think you're right. This thing, I think, is going to ultimately come down to the last possession or two type of thing. We're going to see a field goal kind of at the end up putting somebody ahead. And so I do think it is a field goal game. I do think that the over comes into play. Not going to surprise me if we see both of these teams in the upper 20s when it's all said and done. A 27-24 type of win for the Cincinnati, I think, is how that's going to play out. So I like the over. And one of the props I really like, Joe Burrow, looking pretty good last week. Looks like that calf not really giving him any issues. I'm going to take Joe Burrow to go over 6.5 rushing yards.
Very good. I'm going to take Tyler Lockett over. I have 51.5 receiving yards is where I have Lockett.
All righty. I like that one a lot. I think that one that was definitely hittable and hittable early on that one. Questions coming in here. Where do you guys have Detroit's defense this week? On waivers are Miami, Tampa Bay, Las Vegas, and Seattle. Hold on to Detroit this week. I probably would.
I don't hate Detroit this week. I like Miami more because the Carolina offense has been absolutely anemic.
Yeah.
So if it's just this week, I like Miami slightly more than I like Detroit. But yeah, it's between those two for this week. I'm not in love with the Raiders or Seattle. Tampa Bay, no. So yeah, Miami or Detroit. I lean Miami.
I think you may have talked me into it. So yeah, I think I'm right there with you. And you're right. It's all about that matchup. That Carolina is a juicy matchup for defense special teams. Which games have they been talking about having bad weather this weekend?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The main one that is going to kind of play around with this is the Cleveland San Francisco game. So that one does not look great. There's potential that the Bills Giants game doesn't have the best weather, but with it being what is that? Because that's the Sunday night game. There's potential, but also that storm might be heading a little bit south, so it might clear Buffalo. So you're not going to have to worry about that a whole heck of a lot. And then London's going to be kind of cold and dreary, but that's typical London type weather. So most of these games I don't feel like are in any sort of danger of terrible weather. I don't think we're into that just yet. but the main one coming off the Great Lake of Erie, if you will, is going to be that Cleveland San Francisco game. I think that one's going to be a little sluggish, if you will.
Fair enough. Alrighty. He asked because I have San Francisco's kicker. Am I still good?
Man, Moody's been a hell of a kicker.
Yeah.
You almost ride it out and just sacrifice the week because you know that he's going to get you points every week. Like, I think Moody's good for 7 points, right? You know,
yeah,
two touchdowns or 2 touchdowns, maybe 2 field goals. Like, maybe it's just 2 field goals and a touchdown, depending on how this game plays out. With, again, PJ Walker, I don't think San Francisco is going to have to put up a bunch of points. Like, you go in, you handle business, you chew the clock. You know, don't ask Purdy to do too much in the bad weather, right? You try and use Christian McCaffrey. You use Mason and just try and keep running that clock out a little bit. But I think this game's going to be pretty quick just due to the wind and kind of the cold, dreary conditions.
Fair enough. I like that. Yeah, the one thing too, when you're talking Cleveland and you're talking that stadium there, the wind gets in there and just swirls coming off of there. So kicking is no fun. But to Kevin's point, you're really like a great performance from a kicker. You're getting 8 points. Bad performance, you're getting like 2 or 3. If your matchup's going to come down to a kicker, that's a heck of a contest that you've got going there, and there's other moves that you can probably make to make up for that. All right, let's go ahead and head on into the same game we were just kind of talking about with the San Francisco 49ers heading over to Cleveland to take on the Browns. San Francisco favored by 7. The over/under on this one, 37. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking San Francisco to cover the 7. This spread just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I like it at 7. I'll take San Francisco to cover that.
Fair enough.
With the under. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cover with the under. I with as well as Cleveland's defense has been playing, but this game could be 20-10. Right? Like, I think that might be a realistic score for this game. 20-10. No one's in any big hurry. No one's taking any monster chances down the field. A lot of, 1 first down and then punting, essentially, right? So a lot of 6-7 play drives, and then it ends up in a punt. It's not going to be pretty.
Right. You know how it's funny when we when you start highlighting different coaching matchups and how things kind of play out there. One that I always kind of keep coming back to when we're talking a lot of that is when the Rams play the Niners. Even when the Rams have a star-studded roster and a powerhouse deal, and they go on and win this, win the title that year, and San Francisco didn't look good. Like, Shanahan just has McVay's number. Well, there's a defensive coordinator out there that kind of has Kyle Shanahan's number when they square off. That's Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns here. Kyle Shanahan 1-8 against Jim Schwartz defenses out there. So I'm going to play into this thing, and at a 7-point spread, which I actually found it and got it locked in with Cleveland at a +9.5 out there for a game that I don't think is going to score many points. Like, it's going to surprise me if we get really over about 35 total points. So I'm going to take Cleveland to cover that spread on this one. I am going to take the under. I think that this one's going to be a kind of a gross, grimy type of grinded out game, and you're going to see this thing ultimately play out at a 14-10, 15-12 type of matchup here. But I do have Brandon Ayuk going over 47.5 receiving yards. I think that he'll probably see about 5 or 6 different receptions on this thing and just find a way to kind of plug and chug, get just over that 47.5.
I've seen him see under 72.5. He was on my Pine list on the Tuesday show, kind of doubling down on that here just a little bit. I think he could very well end up with 67 and a touchdown, but I think what they might do is to get outside of kind of the teeth of the Cleveland front seven. I think you might see CMC with more receiving work this week, right? Like just short passes, swing passes, use the screen game, that type of thing to help get some offense generated without having to toss the ball down the field, if you will. So under 72.5 rushing for CMC.
I like it. All righty, let's hit up the next matchup here. We got the Carolina Panthers, Miami Dolphins squaring off. Miami favored by 13.5. The over-under is 47.5. Thoughts on this one?
Miami. I'm going to take the over. Like, I still feel like they can get there by themselves. It's a little shell shock from the Bronco game from a few weeks ago still. Carolina's offense is not good, right? Like, Adam Thielen has been very well done. Very well. Mingo continues to see targets. They're going to be without Miles Sanders. So, what's Chuba going to be able to do while the game is still close? Because once they get behind, Chuba's not going to be receiving the ball out of the backfield. So it's going to be, start your Dolphins this week. This is kind of what I'm telling everybody.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. As much as I want to try and not go into a full-on 2-touchdown type of spread, I don't know how you get around it in this one, right? Miami has looked really good. They're on a historic pace for offensive performance. The defense isn't bad. Carolina has just been awful. I'm going to take Miami on this one. I am going to take the over again, right? Like what you just said, Miami could touch 48 by themselves in this one. As far as a prop that I really like, was Adam Thielen to go over 5.5 receptions in this one.
I'm taking Jonathan Mingo over 32.5 receiving yards. I think he gets some garbage time work here.
Fair enough. That was part of that. That's part of the reason I played into that Thielen thing because last couple of weeks we've seen that like going down through and just garbage time type of things, and he just racks up receptions and yards.
Yeah, first 2.5 quarters get really ugly, right? So it's not something that you want to watch play by play, but at the end of it, you just look up the stat line and go, hey, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, that one worked out for my fantasy roster for sure.
Exactly.
So, alrighty, let's go ahead and head on into our next matchup here. We got the Colts and the Jaguars facing off here. Jacksonville favored by 4. The over-under on this one is 44.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take Jacksonville here, coming off back-to-back wins in London. They have handled the Colts fairly easily here the last 4 contests against Indianapolis. This game is at home for Jacksonville. I think they're able to do it again here. So I'm going to take Jacksonville. I want to make sure I'm not misquoting myself here. Sorry, guys. Yes, I do like the under in this game. Just enough. But again, would not surprise me to see something 24-18, 24, I say 24-20 because the push wins in our game. So something like that. But I think Jacksonville takes care of it.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville kind of found their groove there a little bit, right? They seemingly started to click a little bit over in the London town here. I do think that we see the over get touched when this thing's all said and done. So not going to surprise me if we look up, even with the Gardner Minshew led Colts, that we could see this thing play out in the neighborhood of that kind of 27-24 type of deal. As well. So I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take Jacksonville. And looking at it, looks like you and I both really like the Josh Downs prop of over 44.5 receiving yards on that.
Oh, shoot. Did we both take that?
We did. Let's
roll
with it.
Apologies. My apologies. I think I was the second one in the dock this week, so I did not look.
No worries. It's, we had the same thing happen on the Tuesday show with that McKinnon prop, and that one hit. So let's just ride it. Let's roll it. All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up the next matchup here. We got the New Orleans Saints heading over to take on the Houston Texans. New Orleans favored by 1.5 over under on this one, 42.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking New Orleans in this one. I think defensively, they're going to be able to get just enough stops. So I have the under in this game. I think the New Orleans defense will stymie Houston just enough, and maybe not so much as pressure on CJ Stroud, but just the ability to kind of lock everything down a little bit. No Tank Dell, so Nico Collins. I'm hoping he's able to bust through. I need Nico, right? Like Nico's one of those guys I got going up against you here in the home league. So I need Nico to have not a bust out game, but just a solid performance. It's going to be a little bit tough against New Orleans here, but fingers crossed. So I'm taking New Orleans to cover. I'm going to take the under as well. I think this game's going to struggle to get to 40 points.
I'm right there with you on the under. I think that this thing's going to be a kind of a grinded out thing here, but Houston's been playing much better than I thought they would have, and I do think that continues here. So I'm going to actually take Houston to cover this thing. That Texans offense, far better than I had expected. So I think that we see them do just enough to keep this thing within that kind of 2-point spread here. So I'm going to take that one. As far as a prop that I really like CJ Stroud to go over his prop of 220.5 passing yards. That is that line's kind of significant because through his young career, 5 games, we have yet to see him go under that number. So I'm going to say that he's done it thus far. He'll do it again.
Nope, I like that. Alvin Kamara over 29.5 receiving yards.
I like that one. I can see that one coming true. Alrighty. Joe saying hello from third shift workers. Well, hello, Joe.
What's going on, man?
Alrighty. I see some other comments. I'm just waiting for them to populate here so I can pull them up. Alrighty. So a lot of people like Flowers this week. Y'all rather go Garrett Wilson and Lockett. Lockett had a huge week too, but besides that, hasn't broken 10 points. Wilson could be the best bet, but he has Zach Wilson. So Kevin kind of already covered the Zach Wilson take on that one there, right? Like there's still a good chance that you see Wilson with 70 yards and a touchdown, right? Even though Zach Wilson's the one throwing the ball. Like there's a very real possibility of that one. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Flowers matchup is intriguing because it is Tennessee. The Flowers matchup was intriguing last week too. And he was right at projection, right? Like he did not disappoint necessarily, but he's not getting you anything extra. And at the moment with this passing attack, like if you're not Mark Andrews getting targeted in the end zone, you're just kind of hovering around 55 yards. Like I think Flowers' ceiling is 62 to 65 yards this week. Garrett Wilson and Tyler Lockett's ceiling, I feel like for this week is higher than that. Seattle has an uncanny ability of when it's time to play big, they play big. Because that big week 2 that Lockett had was against Detroit, who has been smacking everybody else in the league around. So, again, it's just our opinions. If you have a gut feeling about Flowers, please play him, right? Like it's your roster and you manage it how you need to. It's just kind of how I see this week.
All right. And so Gorilla Kid, full disclosure, I've got Flowers on my home league team that I'm matching up against Kevin. He's riding the bench. He's not in my starting lineup. Granted, I've got some wide receivers that
you got some power to play over him though.
Right, I do. But even if I'm going through that, right, like, and you bring up a really good point that he didn't disappoint per se from a projection standpoint from all of that. But for anybody that watched that game, he certainly disappointed Baltimore fans and he disappointed fantasy managers that watched that game because he had 2 like very egregious drops on that one. And that's the part of the problem that you see with this Baltimore receiving core right now. They have a case of the dropsies in the locker room.
Yeah, Flowers has 6 through 5 weeks. I am struggling in a league, in full transparency. I'm debating between Flowers and T. Higgins, right? And I have to make a decision because if Higgins goes inactive or, plays 2 snaps and, decides to sit out the rest of the game, because we've seen that from T. Higgins,
Or
I don't
takes
want
a
to get
shot in the
pinched.
ribs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Shot in the ribs, because those rib injuries are tough. So I think I'm going to have to play Flowers over Higgins because I need the sure thing this week. Like I just ceilings are great, but I just need the sure thing. My opponent didn't have a great Thursday night with some people that he chose to start, and so now I need to capitalize, and I just need the points. So in that instance, I am going Flowers.
Yep, and I can absolutely understand the appeal and the upside and taking that one there. And if you look at it, Gorilla Kid, you can look at it. Expert consensus rankings would put Flowers over both Garrett Wilson and Tyler Lockett. Like I went and looked that up while we're doing that. So if you want to go with what the consensus says out there, right? Like the consensus says to go Flowers. Our opinions on how we would manage our rosters, we both walked you through on kind of what we're looking at and why we're looking at it that way. And so you can make a, what we would hope is a more informed decision, right? But it is, at the end of the day, it's your roster. You have to live with the points that were in your starting lineup or on your bench. So it's just kind of, up to you there. So
sorry, I was reading. I was reading. I was looking at your icon. Does it pain you, being a Steelers fan, that you have to root for Flowers to go off? Because I feel that way on being a Broncos fan. If I have Josh Jacobs on a roster, I almost feel dirty having to root for him.
Right.
3-2. I'm trying to. No, there's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. With that statement, to me, that speaks to Garrett Wilson even more. Like, I don't think Zay Flowers is going to be able to get you more than 14 points max. Garrett Wilson has the potential to give you 21, in my opinion. Again, if you have that gut feeling, run it. I get it. It's just like I said, it's just how we see it.
Absolutely. He says, thanks a lot, fellas.
Yeah, no worries, man.
All right, and then Joe asking, who should I start or who should I flex? KJ Osborne, Drake London, Ramadre, half point PPR, thinking KJ.
Not Ramondre. Ramondre's just not seeing the passing work. So I think Osborne looks like the low-hanging fruit here. Drake is coming off a really good week with Desmond Ridder, and the Washington Commanders have been giving it up through the air, right? The Washington Commanders, last time we saw them, were getting torched, and I think DJ Moore just scored another touchdown against them, right? Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. So it is Osborne or Drake London. So we can start with that and eliminate Ramondre for this week. I just don't think you need to worry about that. Drake's at home. Osborne's going to see a larger target share, but I still think he's going to play third fiddle, right? I think Osborne's still going to be third fiddle between Hawkinson, Addison, and then Osborne in the passing game, right? So do you trust a third fiddle for Minnesota on the road, outdoors, or do you trust the primary option in a team that does not pass as much, but quarterback just had the best game of his career, playing up against a team that does give it up against the pass? Probably going to see 8 targets to Drake London. I think KJ might see 5.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, again, you guys are getting all this live, right? Like, I mean, this is just kind of how we see things as we're seeing what your situations are. But that's just kind of the mental jog I do when I'm looking through this. Like, all right, eliminate 1. Here's the 2. I'm not going to blame you to play Osborne because I think that game has the higher total, right? Derek said earlier, there's a chance that game could touch 60 total points. Yes, you want a piece of that. So that would be Osborne. But as bad as the Falcons have been, I like number 1 options over number 3 options.
And then, yes, you're right. Like, as bad as the Falcons passing attack has been, the Commanders, and part of that is skewed very heavily by the performance DJ Moore just put up against them. But, Marvin Mims put up a monster performance against the Commanders as well. Like, they are susceptible to giving up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers. They give up the third most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers out there. So I like London.
And they gave it
Ramondre,
up to Philly too. Now, Jalen
Right.
Hurts is different caliber, but they gave it up to
Right.
Philly too, right? Between Brown and Devonta
AJ
Smith.
Brown had a monster game that week. Ramondre, as much as I love Ramondre, like, I just, at
He's not
best
seeing the
he's
passing work.
at best he's a low end RB2, but he's a low end RB2 at best because of who he plays. The Raiders, they miss a ton of tackles, they allow a ton of yards after contact. Like, but to Kevin's point, right? Like, he hasn't seen quite the snap share. Like, the snap share is actually trending down for Ramondre all the way since week 2. So that's not a promising sign, even against a matchup here that should be juicy. I think London's the guy. So I think we have a consensus here.
London by a hair. And if you have a gut feeling about KJ Osborne, go for it.
Right.
I'm so
Price.
glad I flipped Stevenson.
Right.
I'm so glad I flipped him.
And you did it during the right week too.
All right.
All right. Should I trade Monty and Ramondre for AJ Brown? No. You want Monty. Like, I get the AJ
I guess
Brown
my
upside,
question is what does that leave for your running back room? Right? I'm assuming you got Montgomery late. We're good with getting rid of Ramondre, right? So do you have, who are your other 3 backs if you feel like you can give up 2 right now? Who are your top 3 backs that you have left to feel comfortable doing this?
Yeah. And at that point, I would still ask you, why are you giving up 2 running backs and one of them being the 6 RB on the year so far in Monty? Like, and there's a good chance that when we look up at the end of the season, Monty leads the league in touchdowns. Like, there's a really good shot of that. You're also talking about a guy that's on pace for when I was going through and all that, like, he's on pace for almost 400 opportunities this year. Like, that's a lot of opportunities in a really good offense behind probably the best offensive line in football. So, like, I have Monty as the 3rd RB in our home league, and it will take a king's ransom for me to give him up. Like, and it will take a monster offer for me to part ways with Monty. All right. Azizi saying Tennessee's perfect remedy for Baltimore. They'll get things right on Sunday with Lamar and Zay. You're right. That's a plus matchup for sure.
Baltimore thought the same thing against the Colts at home and lost.
Right. Or Pittsburgh. Yeah, Pittsburgh gives up points in bunches to opposing wide receivers.
Clearly we're not buying the Baltimore hype, right? And so, it's just how we feel about the situation. If you're looking for Baltimore hype, guys, this is not the show. Like, right now, Monken's offense is not flowing through well like I thought it would. Andrews is by far the skill position go-to have. Lamar has absolutely been serviceable, so there's nothing wrong there. But, Odell's been hurt. Bateman hurt, can't stay on the field. Flowers serviceable, but not elite. Like, he's a wide receiver 3. Like, it's just what he is for this year.
Right. Draco saying, would you move Lamar and DJ Moore for Josh Allen and Tyler Lockett? Yes, Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill.
No.
I'd want something a little bit more than Lockett.
No, that is killer, dude. Being able to run Diggs and Tyreek and then DJ Moore in your flex, that is a remedy to where you don't have to worry about chasing running back and whatever and getting into some situations. Like, I don't feel like there's that great of a drop off between the combination of players, right? Where you would be playing them. So my question back is, you get Josh Allen, he's starting at quarterback. What are you doing in your flex? If it's not DJ Moore, who are you plugging in?
Yep. Hit us up with that info, and that may change the picture a little bit more there. Gorilla Kid saying he just subbed. Be talking to you guys. Appreciate the insight for sure. Mason asking, would you trade Saquon for ETN? I want the ETN side of that.
Yeah, if you can get ATN, go for it.
Absolutely.
He's healthy. He's been getting the ball. The Jacksonville offense has been clicking better the last 2 weeks. Being over in London, they have a home game again this week. So yeah, if you can flip it and get ETN, do it.
Yeah, ETN has been. I was a year late on ETN. It was a year late, for anybody that was watching the show last year, I was claiming that ETN was going to be a top 5 back last year, and it's just turning out I was about a year late or a year early on that one. So anyway, looks like Gorilla Kid saying that they'll be seeing you in the swamp on the 28th. I'm sure Kevin.
Fan.
All right, and being a Steeler, just want Flowers to get points but win 0 games.
There you go.
He is not a Ravens fan at all there.
Yeah,
so.
I don't blame you.
So, all righty. Again, guys, if you have questions, comments, throw them in the chat here. We'll go through them. But we're going to head over to our next matchup here. We've got the New England Patriots taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders favored by 3. The over-under on this one, 41.5.
I'm going to take the Raiders at home. I mean, the game against Green Bay was not overly entertaining, but they showed that they can command home field here a little bit. And I think that's what they do out in Vegas. It's going to be interesting to see what the Patriots try and do defensively. Do they try and take away Jacobs, or do they try and take away Devonta Adams? Because typically Belichick will try and take away your best option. I'm curious to see what he thinks that is this game. I like Jacoby Myers in this game. The offense for the Pats has just looked so bad. They can't get the running game going. Their passing game has been struggling. Mac Jones has been yanked in the third quarter each of the last 2 weeks. It's clunky. It's indecisive. It is, I don't want to say talentless, because that's might be a little bit over the top, but it is devoid of talent, or it is void of talent. How about that?
All righty. You convinced me to the point where I was thinking that, New England was the play here on this one. Tough to, Belichick going in against his protege here and yada, 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 right? Like all the narrative that is around that. But you're right. Like the more I got thinking about that, the more and more I keep leaning back to the fact that New England has looked just anemic all along the offensive side of the ball. The defensive has done okay at times, but still not enough to necessarily shut anybody down and win these.
And they're down Judon and their top 2 corners.
Right.
Or 2 of their top 3. Sorry. 2 of their top 3 corners. Like, it will take a Herculean performance, again, in my opinion, from the Patriots defense to win this game. Like, they will have to have 2 defensive touchdowns and force 3 or 4 turnovers.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to take the under on this thing, though. I do think that we see points again coming at a bit of a premium, right? Like, I don't trust New England to put up more than 14, 15 points. I don't really trust the Raiders to put up more than about 20. So I think this is going to be about a 35-point total game on this one. So I'm taking the under. I am going to take the prop of Jacoby Myers to go over 4.5 receptions.
I like that. I'm going to take Ramondre Stevenson under 50.5 rushing yards.
Fair enough. All right, let's hit up question here. All right, what up, boys? Moved Hopkins for Mixon. Good move. Full PPR, had luxury at wide receiver depth of Diggs, Ayuk, Hollywood, Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Dell, Downs. Running back depth was Pollard, James Cook, Herbert, injured, and Spears.
Yeah, I like the move. It filled a need, right? You needed some running back depth. You Diggs, Ayuk, Hollywood has been much better, right? Dobbs has done a better job of getting Hollywood the ball than I thought was going to happen. So kudos to Arizona for doing that, and getting some depth there is not a bad thing. So I like the move. I feel like you did well with that.
Yeah, I really like it as well. Also, just moved Hawkins. Somebody just moved Hawkinson for Waller and Pickens. Fair trade. Who won it to? Kind of a wash, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit on the Hawkinson side, but
Hawkinson's the best player in the deal for sure. But if you needed to acquire if you needed a better flex and you didn't love who you had there, Waller is a downgrade, but he's still the best option in New York. It's kind of like saying, you have the skinniest girl at fat camp, but still, like, he's the best option at New York. And Pickens, we've seen it, right? Like, yes, Deontay Johnson's coming back, but I think that helps Pickens more than hurts him. So I do think it's fair. Like, Hawkins is the best player, but I think the package there, if you need wide receiver help, Pickens is a great guy to go after.
Yeah, and I think Darren Waller rest of the season will drastically improve from what we've seen. So, it's one of those that it's kind of a wash for me as far as, who won it type of thing. I think at the end of the season, we'll look up and see if Waller, kind of stumbles down the stretch here. You'll kind of get your answer. So it's one of those hindsight will tell us a different tale, I think, than where we're at right now. But right now, I think it's kind of a wash. I do like. I'm on a 2-for-1. I'm usually a bigger fan of getting the best player in the deal, and that's Hawkinson. So.
Especially the next 4 weeks, right?
Yep.
Like, it'll be interesting, but Jefferson being out this week against Chicago, short term, it is Hawkinson, but it's close enough that it's not worth getting frustrated over.
Right. And he said, got it. Appreciate y'all. Michael is saying, hey, guys, start James Cook or Barkley with that dog water line. I'm going Cooks if it's me. I get the appeal of Barkley, but coming off of a high ankle sprain, playing the Bills, no thanks.
Bills just let Travis Etienne feast. But the Giants have let everybody feast. So if you need, and the beauty is with this, you don't have to wait, or you don't have to make that decision until right before the Sunday night game, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the matchup goes, if you need the safer floor, I think it's Cooks because James Cook, because the Giants defense is just worse. If you are chasing points coming into Sunday night, I think it's Barkley. Right. I think he'll see probably a little bit more passing work, especially with Tyrod Taylor. They're going to ask him to do quite a bit. My biggest fear is if this game gets out of control, you could see them tell Barkley just to go ahead and sit down, don't push it too hard, and then they're going to run with, backs 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. All righty. Joe's asking, will Roschon Johnson take over as RB1 in Chicago, even if Khalil Herbert returns?
I think so. But yeah, he's got to get through concussion protocol. And the scary thing was, this happened last Thursday night, and he's not even practicing yet. I mean, he's had over a week now and hasn't even touched the field yet. So that's where I'm concerned. But if he can get out of protocol next week and have basically a 3-week run to be the guy, Herbert didn't run away with that job. So if Roschon can do enough to convince the Bears, I'm your guy, he has his opening, but he's got to get healthy. And then he's going to have a 3-game sample size to try and produce.
Yeah, and we made that call early on, all the way back in, May, when we covered the Bears for this season, where we were very much of the opinion that Roschon Johnson would have the starting role when the season was done with, right? That he would take over that backfield and he would be the guy. The one thing that does concern me a little bit here is the fact that I think had he been available to go this game, he would have been RB1 going up there with Donta Foreman being the spellback, being that kind of stuff. And I think that would have helped Roschon here. My concern would be is that Donta Foreman comes out, does just enough to kind of solidify a 1-2 thumper type of role on this one. And we see Roschon continue the role that he has there and not really get to see that elevated deal. Should Donta do just enough this week to have an okay game. So there is some of that does slightly concern me on that one. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that one. All right, let's go ahead and hit up. We got a couple more comments here, so we'll hit these ones up, and then we'll hit up our next game here. Gorilla Kid saying hit that like button. Appreciate that very much. Chris asking, traded Javonte for Jerome Ford in redraft. Thoughts? It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen another, right? Like Javonte has, kind of looked better than what I would have expected him looking like in this first year. However, the Broncos are Broncoing things up, and they haven't necessarily been that great. Jerome Ford, we've seen him do enough to be relevant for fantasy, but it's not necessarily anything super crazy on that one. Now, the difference is that Javonte is gonna be in that timeshare type of thing, whereas Jerome Ford realistically has kind of that that all kind of wrapped up to himself there. As far as that goes as well, right? Like rest of the season, these guys are probably pretty close to one of another, right? Like I would probably put Jerome Ford slightly ahead of Javonte in redraft formats, rest of season type of outlook there. So it's close. I kind of prefer the Jerome Ford side. And the reason that I give the edge to Jerome Ford is really the strength of schedule for the playoff run for fantasies. So, you're talking weeks 15, 16, 17 type of thing there. Jerome Ford having a much more favorable matchup for the fantasy playoffs than what Javonte has there. Any thoughts on this trade?
Cosign. I like the Jerome Ford side.
Cool. Alrighty. George saying, hey guys, I have Ken Walker. Should I add Charbonnet in case Walker injuries? I would have to drop Jameson or Quentin Johnston. I think you can kind of just wait and see, right? Like, is it George, if it's a fab type of league, then you just save up your fab and you spend heavy on that one to get your backup there. If it's a waiver wire, hold on to it and just kind of, let your waiver wire run there. But I don't think you necessarily have to worry about a bunch of folks heading out there to try and add Charbonnet in the meantime there.
I'm dropping Quentin Johnston. I'm picking him up.
Okay.
Because I don't want to fight that crowd. Because if Walker goes down, Zach Charbonnet has that backfield completely to himself for all intents and purposes. And we know how much Seattle likes to run the ball. So I would drop Quentin Johnston and do it. Take the upsided Jameson Williams, see what he's able to do with St. Brown being back in there. I like both offenses, but I'm not convinced that Quentin Johnston's more than the third or fourth option for the Chargers right now.
Fair enough. All right, you talked me into it. You guys think Sanders is going to make it through the season? I'm just about using my number one waiver wire on Chuba. You probably should. Miles Sanders is going to sit this week. He's been banged up a lot through the season. Like, you may need to if you were banking on Sanders trying to be your RB2.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. Running back depth will be key getting through the bye weeks.
Bingo. Y'all think moving from Devontae Smith to Waddle is an upgrade or a lateral move? It's on the lateral side for me.
I would tell you, I feel like it's an upgrade because I still feel like we've yet to see the best out of Jalen Waddle.
And those splash weeks are going to be big when they hit.
Yes. So Devonta Smith absolutely will have a couple big weeks left in him as well. So it is pretty lateral. From today through rest of season, I would have Waddle slightly ranked above Devonta Smith.
Fair enough. Alrighty. And Draco was saying, can y'all tell me why I shouldn't make that trade again? DJ Moore's a sell high candidate to me.
Then make the trade.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not trying to be too flippant about it. If you want to make the trade, make the trade. It's just our opinion. Like, he is clearly the number one target in Chicago. The rapport has been there. He's averaging 19 yards, 19 yards per catch right now, which is leading the NFL for players that have seen over 40 targets. So yes, I see why you think he's so high, but the Bears are going to struggle to score points all year long, so he's going to continue to be featured. Like, they're not magically going to turn into a team that runs 50 times a game and can win games that way.
Right. And when you look at it too, right, like he's got like I can understand the sell high aspect of it, right? But we're 5 games into the season. Is 3 100-yard contests on this one, right? Like the quarterback play isn't necessarily holding him back like what we've seen in previous years when he was down in Carolina. When you look at it as well, he's 6th in the league in deep target shots. You want fantasy upside? Get a wide receiver that can catch the ball in space, contested catches, can turn on the burners, run away from guys, and is getting deep shots to begin with. He's 6th in the league right now in deep shot targets. He's 14th in the league in end zone targets. And this is a team that struggles to kind of get down there and has struggled to put up points. And he's putting up a lot of metrics that, one, he's a one-touch guy to begin with. He's getting deep shots down the field. 2, he can catch the ball. He's getting targets and looks in the end zone on a team that hadn't necessarily done a great job getting down there. So I think we can see him continue to rock and roll this thing. And it's not going to surprise me rest of season. We look up and we see DJ Moore finish inside the top 10. Like, we may see him go down a little bit from where he currently is, but I think that you've got a top 10 wide receiver when the season's all said and done. The Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen thing, yeah, you're moving up on that one. Is it necessarily a big move up to the point where it covers the downside off of what you're looking at Tyler Lockett to DJ Moore? No, I don't think that offsets there. But again, it's your roster. You manage it how you'd like to do it. I'm kind of in that same point that Kevin's talking about there, that I'd rather roll out Tyreek, Stephon Diggs, DJ Moore as that and play catch me if you can, because I really only need one of my 3 wide receivers out there to blow up, and each one of those guys is capable of having a massive monster win you a week type of performance. And the floors are pretty safe to the point where none of them are necessarily going to go out there and lose you a week either. So that's kind of why I'm looking at that one there. Any other thoughts there?
No.
Okay. Start D. Smith or Flowers this week.
Flowers is your floor. Devonta Smith is your ceiling. Depends on what you need.
Draco saying thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right, like it. Let's go ahead and hit up that next matchup here. We got the Cardinals, the Rams, Arizona heading over to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Rams are favored by 7. The over-under on this one, 48.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going to have Arizona cover this one. I know that they kind of got chased out a little bit by Cincinnati last week, but I'm giving them one more week to kind of show some resilience coming off a bad loss. But I think they're able to keep it close. Divisional game. The Rams have not been overly convincing in the back half, right? The front seven's done a pretty good job. Back end a little loose, right? We saw A.J. Brown get loose again. Dallas Goedert had a big week, which if you're a Zach Ertz owner, you should be crossing your fingers and say, come on, let's do it again. I think the running game will struggle a little bit more with Connor being injured, but I don't know that it's going to be enough to really alter the status of this game. So Cardinals cover the 7. Wouldn't surprise me if it ends up a push. And then I'm going to take the under. I don't think we see 48 points here. That's a big number from mediocre offenses. Neither one are great. They're mediocre.
Fair enough. The defenses are also on the mediocre side, so we've got a whole lot of mediocrity playing each other here. And so I think I am going to take the over, right? I as much as I want to be like, oh, yeah, it'll be on the underside, I think we could easily see this thing probably play out in the 28-21 side of it. So it's just on the overside. I do think that Arizona manages to keep this thing within a field goal, at worst case a push. So I'm right there with you. One of the props I really liked on this one was Matthew Stafford to go over 1.5 rushing yards.
Very good. I'm going to take Michael Wilson over 32.5 receiving yards.
Love it. All righty. We got the Eagles taking on the Jets. Philly favored by 7. The over-under on this one is 41. Thoughts on this game?
Taking Philly. I'm taking the over here. I think that they find a way to do this on the road. The Jets have been able to give it up on the ground here a little bit, so I think that means good things for DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts, both. I think Hurts is going to have a pretty good game. Neutralize that pass rush. You got to slow him down, so make him think twice before getting after you. So overall, Philly should take command of this game. It is, as the 1A or B, depending on what camp you're in, team in the NFC, but it is them in San Francisco that are kind of head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, and I think that we do see Philly, get this one done here. The 41 is kind of a low number, so I'm going to take the over on this one. Not going to surprise me when I look up and see this one end in a 24-17 type of matchup, which really kind of is that push area, but I think we find a way to get a score somewhat similar to that, and I think we just over the point total there. As far as a prop I really like, Tyler Conklin to go over 2.5 receptions.
Very good. I'm going to take Breece Hall over 14.5 receiving yards. It's going to be tough for him to get up into the teeth of this Philly defense, so you have to get him wide and in space. Best way to get him in space, swing passes and screens.
I like it. All righty, let's hit up the Lions taking on the Buccaneers. Detroit's favored by 3.5. Over under on this one, 42.5.
I'm taking Detroit, and I have a sneaky feeling about the over here. Like, the defenses tell you that this would probably hit the under at 42.5. Like, we should be having, a 20-17 type game and hit this under. I think we hit the over. I think that with what Baker's been able to do in the passing game there, and that's where Detroit has been susceptible. They've done a good job against the run, and they've been giving up the passes as of late here. So I think that's a good thing for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, even possibly Cade Otton as you roll through there and Baker uses his weapons. I think we're able to get some points here. And this game might kind of sneakily be the high-scoring game of the week.
Yeah. I mean, these are two defenses that have definitely kind of showed out all season long. But I think you're right. I think this is, I don't know that I'll jump on the bandwagon to say highest scoring game of the week, but I will say that I do think that each one of these teams can get into the 20s when this thing's all said and done. It really wouldn't surprise me to look up and see this thing be a 24-3 kind of game, or 24-21 3-point game. And that's why I'm going to actually take Tampa Bay on this one. I think that they're going to find a way to get just inside that hook is what's going to push this thing to the Tampa Bay side of it. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I'm going to take the over. As far as one of the props that I really liked on this one, though, I really like Baker to go under his prop of 228.5 passing yards.
Okay. I'm going to take Josh Reynolds to go over 31.5 receiving yards. I think he's as kind of that number 2 option here at the moment. I think he's done a good job to find gaps. He settles into zone really well. And he's just kind of an extra security blanket, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown's your number 1 target. Yes, you have Sam Laporta there kind of as your number 2, but Josh Reynolds always seems to find himself in the right spot to bail out Jared Goff.
Yeah. Josh Reynolds actually, a couple of top 15 fantasy performances on the weeks. I really like that call there. Question from Azizi saying, actually, he doesn't have the Miles Sanders. Just thought Sanders might not make it through the season, so Chuba could end up becoming the lead back. Not sure if I want to use my number 1 waiver wire and end up being wrong. So there's a couple of things that come into play on that one. If your waiver wire turns over quickly, fail fast type of thing on that one, right? if it's going to be a deal where somebody sits on their waiver priority for half of a season to try and get the one guy that they really want or the big hot name, then that's a little bit of a tougher road to go down there. But at the end of the day, right, it's Sanders has been banged up. Sanders is already out this week. If you need a running back, Chuba is a bona fide starting running back this week, and he very well could be see some decent time down the road. But Miles Sanders certainly is the lead back if he's healthy. Jay asking Thielen or Hopkins or Zay Flowers. I'm gonna take Thielen in garbage time. Outpoints everybody.
I'm gonna take Hopkins.
Fair enough. I just don't like that London game matchup there.
I like it that he's the only show in town. He's the only guy from Tennessee catching passes right now.
Fair enough. As easy saying, I'm that guy that's sitting there since I got number 1. LOL. Yeah, but if the rest of your league rolls through and burns those priorities like they're drinking water, it doesn't.
I say it. I'm not going to say that we're past the point of the Jerome Fords or the Devon A-Chains or that. I mean, it could happen, right? If Josh Jacobs goes down, all of a sudden Zamir White is going to become the fantasy darling because he's going to be the only guy in Vegas there to carry the ball. So, because I guess if you need Chuba, right, put the claim in that doesn't affect your waiver priority, right? Like you can do that Sunday morning, I'm assuming, where it's opened up for everybody, and then just do it Sunday morning. So that way it's just a natural, ad drop, and you're not wavering the claim and losing your priority on it.
Bingo. Jay saying, whatever y'all say, I'm setting it now. Need a big game for one of them. So, all right, let's come to a consensus for him. Thielen, Hopkins, Zay Flowers. I'm gonna pull up some props for each one of them, and we'll just take a look at some of these things. Baltimore, Tennessee. Let me find. Hopkins has a receiving prop 55.5.
But I took the over.
Right. And I took the over on.
And you took the over.
On Thielen's. Thielen's prop is 60.5 on that one. I guess the other thing too, Jay, is it a full point, half point? What kind of scoring systems are we looking at here? And Zay Flowers is a 60.5 yards as well. So you got Thielen and Zay Flowers sitting at 60.5 receiving yards. DeAndre Hopkins sitting at 55.5 receiving yards. I think when it's all said and done, they all kind of end up somewhere in the same. But I do think that if you're getting points in, he did say it's full point PPR. It's full point PPR that takes Zay Flowers out of the conversation, I think, for both of us, right?
Yeah, he just doesn't see enough targets.
Right. So Hopkins props 4.5 receptions. Thielen's props was 5.5 receptions. I took the over on that. Man.
Thielen's gotten you there the last 3 weeks. I mean, I'm all for riding that hot hand, right? Hopkins had a big game last week, but Thielen's done it 3 consecutive weeks where he's just been the guy. And again, it's not pretty how he gets it, but it doesn't need to be pretty because it all counts. Right. So just don't watch the game. Tune in with like 10 seconds left and look at the stat line, and you'll think it's way better than what it actually looked like. But it will not surprise me to see Thielen get a lot of garbage time run against Miami.
Yep.
Soft zone coverage, get it in and out, 12 yards a clip. You could see him rack it up that way. So I'm okay with that. Thielen. I'd go with Thielen.
All right, there we go. We're calling. There you go, Jay. Your call is Thielen. Chris saying that he picked up Hubbard and benched Ford. Have Pierce. Would you waiver over Foreman over Pierce?
No.
There we go.
No. Don't give up on Pierce. I mean, I know he hasn't clicked necessarily like you wanted him to, but I wouldn't give up on Dameon Pierce at all. And you're starting, hold on, go back. You're starting who over Ford?
Picked up Chuba Hubbard and benched Ford.
I would play Ford over Chuba. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
That's me personally.
Chuba's got the better matchup, and I can see why you're looking that way. It's a coin flip for me between Jerome Ford and Chuba Hubbard. The matchup makes it to the point where it's a coin flip. But I think you're right. I think you roll the Dameon Pierce over Foreman.
See,
like Donta Foreman, I think is gonna just kind of.
It's 1 week. Foreman is 1 week. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you had injuries or bye weeks, right? Like if you were a struggling Najee owner, or you have Najee and Ramondre, right? There's some people who have that combination, and it's just not quite working out. If you have the bad bye weeks, this is where Foreman comes in.
Yeah. I have Osborne in my flex and also starting Ayuk and Chase. So you've got that San Francisco and Chuba or Donta Foreman's the last guy, those 4 running backs you mentioned that I'm starting. I'd go Dameon Pierce. Chuba's got the better matchup. Ford's got with the better matchup typically comes a little bit better ceiling play on it. Like that San Francisco Cleveland game, I think is going to be just a grinded out, grimy type of low scoring affair. So I think Chuba's probably got the higher ceiling play this week, whereas Ford's got the better floor play. So it kind of depends on what you need there. Any other thoughts there?
I like the sheer volume I think Ford's going to get. With PJ Walker at quarterback, they're not going to ask him to do a whole bunch. Cleveland's going to lean on their offensive line and watch a lot of what San Francisco did against Dallas and say, we need to find the way to crack this code and run the ball effectively. So I think Cleveland's going to stay with it. Again, bad weather game. I won't be surprised if Ford sees 22 touches by the end of the game. Right. And that's far more opportunity than Chuba's going to get. Chuba might get 13.
Yeah, probably 13, and he probably sees another 4 opportunities, 4 targets type of thing. So.
Yeah, possibly.
All right. Who's the Niners' second pickup, Mitchell or Mason? That's one of the reasons I don't want to use it in case something were to happen to CMC or even Pollard and pick up Dwaddle. Elijah Mitchell is your second there for the Niners if something were to happen to.
Yeah, he's just been dinged up, right? He's getting healthier. Mason's doing well kind of in service, but if CMC goes down, Mitchell's going to be the 1A.
Right. Chris saying that he loves the vibe and appreciates the insight, and he hit that sub button. Appreciate that, Chris. All right, let's go ahead and hit up the Sunday Night Football matchup. We got the Giants, we got the Bills, and Buffalo's favored by 14. The over-under is 45 on this one. What are your thoughts?
Bills over. Bills might be able to do it by themselves. Like if they're motivated and kind of peeved for looking like poo over in London and they're trying to set a message on national television, I could see Buffalo hitting this number by themselves.
Yeah, and the Giants defense is not going to put up much in the way of resistance, I don't think either.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a prop on which Daniel Jones over under on the sack total on that one, and unfortunately I couldn't find it.
It's because he's out.
That's also true. I was looking earlier in the week on it, but anyway, so I'm right there with you on Buffalo. I think that the over gets hit. I think that Buffalo very well could put up 40 by themselves. One of the props I really like was James Cook to go over 15.5 receiving yards. Seemed really, really low there.
I love it. I'm going to take James Cook over 58.5 rushing. Again, this Giants team, they don't tackle well. They are not a grimy bunch in their front seven. I think they're going to try and focus in on Josh Allen more than anything else, and it's going to leave it open for James Cook.
Fair enough. All righty, let's go ahead and get into the Monday night game here. We got Dallas taking on the Chargers. So the Cowboys taking on the Chargers. Dallas favored by 2. The over-under 51. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Chargers. The Cowboys have looked like trash on the road. 2 road games this year, and they have looked terrible at Arizona and at San Francisco. I'm saying they look terrible again at the Chargers. For you Cowboys fans, it's a prove me wrong game. But I am going to take the over. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game.
Fair enough. As much as I want to, say that the Cowboys are the way to go, I've got to jump on that bandwagon with you and call for the Chargers here. Since Diggs has gone down, that Dallas secondary has gone from one of the best passing defenses out there to one of the worst in the league, where they just give up. They give up points, and they give up lots of points, lots of passing opportunity in the backfield there as well. The Chargers, no slouch themselves in allowing lots of opportunities for receivers here as well. So this could be one where we could potentially see some shootout type of things happen. So I do like the Chargers. I do like the over. However, this is the come back to earth week for Joshua Palmer, in which I think he goes under 49.5 receiving yards.
Fair enough. I'm trying to find the CeeDee Lamb prop, and I have not been able to find it yet. So pardon me while I'm scrolling through this real quick, seeing if another site has it. Receiving props. No. Palmer, Allen, Everett, Eckler. There are no Cowboy receiving props.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any either.
This wedding is horse crap.
Yeah, right. There's no lines on any of the books that I can see for CeeDee Lamb on receiving yards.
That's stinking hot garbage. All right, I'm going to take Eckler over 33.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I like it. A little return to action here, and could have a very, very good game. All righty. Well, that's got the last of the games that we've got here. Ajiji saying he expects Kellen Moore after a bye week to stick it to McCarthy. No love lost between these two, that's for sure. And Ajiji also calling for the Chargers there as well. Anyway, that's all of the games that we've got. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, I think the afternoon slate's a little bit more entertaining than the morning slate. There's some real dogs there for the earlier kickoffs, but it's week 6, right? It is go time, right? If your team is sub 500, it is go time here starting this week, because you got to start making enough moves to stay relevant. You don't have too many more weeks to give and play catch up, especially if you're 0-5 or 1-4. Like, you gotta go. So waiver wire trades, whatever it is, but you are playing for this week. This needs to be your Super Bowl 1 week at a time going forward.
Right. It can be done. All you got to do is sneak into the playoffs. And typically, if you sneak into the playoffs after a rough start like that, you've assembled a roster that's been able to grind it out and win. And actually, you become a very, very tough out, even on those teams that go in there seemingly having kind of cakewalked their season into the playoffs there. So best of luck to you. Let's make some things happen out there. If you guys have some questions, you can throw them in on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. Best place to help support the channel, head over to the youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell, get the notifications when we go live. We'll be back again on the Tuesday show, 11 p.m. Eastern. Any final thoughts? I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Good luck to everyone. Like Derek said, hit us up. We will be close to our devices all weekend long as we watch some foosball tomorrow and then enjoy the NFL slate on Sunday.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.